The first time I saw him, he didn't make a great impression on me. He came with one of my friends who was visiting me. He sat down on the carpet in the salon and didn't say a word all evening. When he had gone, I thought, that young chap isn't very bright. I saw him again in February 1962. I was suffering from double pneumonia. I'd been taken to hospital as a matter of urgency. Theo came to see me every day. He read novels to me, bought little dolls for me, and also brought flowers. It was then that our love developed. He and I got on well together. Nothing more. It was unexpected and therefore wonderful. But how could I even have thought of marrying him? It's not credible, I told myself, and I took great care not to make any future plans. I was like someone in a train who suddenly discovers the landscape of his dreams, the ideal place where he would like to have lived and built his house. But he knows that the train won't stop, and the landscape will disappear. Theo will meet another woman, I thought, a woman of his own age. He'll make his life with her. It's normal. All the same, I'll have had that, his love. I left the nursing home. He came to live nearby. One day, we were in the big drawing room in my apartment in the Boulevard Lannes. It was still empty. Theo seemed to me unusually serious. "What's the matter?" I asked him. "If I asked you to marry me," he replied, "would you accept?" I was so completely astonished that I broke into nervous laughter, but when I saw that Theo had gone white, I controlled myself. I ran my fingers through his hair and explained to him in the kindest way possible, "You're a young man. You've got all your life in front of you. One day you'll meet a younger woman. You're crazy." That didn't seem to console him. On the contrary. "Listen," I went on, "a woman of my age doesn't marry just like that, in a casual way. She hasn't got the right, nor the time, to make a mistake, especially after the kind of life I've had. I'm asking you for time to think it over." He agreed. "Very well. I'll wait for your answer for as long as it takes." I made him wait a month. Not a single day of that month went by without my thinking about his proposal of marriage. Of course, I loved Theo. I felt an infinite tenderness towards him, and he was so gentle with me. I admit, too, that I felt rather proud to have made the conquest of a young man of his age. But marrying him? Shortly before I met Theo, I had had an argument with my friend Françoise because she had fallen in love with a boy younger than herself, and now this had happened to me. I had told her she was crazy, thoughtless. I had even said to her, "Aren't you ashamed of going down the street with a boy who could be your son? Aren't you upset by the way people look at you?" And now, in my turn. It was my pride that rebelled. At night I spent hours in the dark with my eyes wide open, wondering, should I marry him? He's so good, so attentive. I shall never find another boy like him. But 5 minutes afterwards I would say to myself, "Think carefully, Edith. In 10 years' time you'll be 57, and you'll be an old woman, while he'll be only 37, a man in the prime of life. At that moment, what will you represent for him? A terrible burden, perhaps." There was also another reason which tipped the balance towards a refusal. Marriage frightened me. I had the feeling that I wasn't made for it, the impression that I lacked the qualities necessary to make a good wife. I had never known how to look after a home, how to cook. Furniture, carpets, ornaments, those sort of things don't really interest me. And then my first marriage, although it was more normal, had been a failure, despite the love that we felt for each other. And Jacques had also been kind, very understanding and very patient, but Our profession had defeated our love. Now Theo is singing. Theo will act in films. Theo will have a career of his own. On the day of my divorce, I had sworn never to go through such an experience again. What was the point in getting married if a few years later I was to find myself more solitary than ever? And there was something worse. Was I even capable of making a man happy? Was it still possible that I could succeed in accomplishing that task, to ensure a man's happiness? I've always had an impossible character. I've been capricious and jealous, and whenever I'm jealous, I fly into a terrible rage. In fact, I don't tolerate a man's will very easily. I'm tempted to impose my will on him. I'm a restive type of person, and I possess the spirit of contradiction in an extreme form. In making an honest list of the reasons for and against, I could see clearly that, as far as this marriage was concerned, there were more reasons against it. And yet, I said yes to Theo. It was a dream that decided for me. Basing your life on a dream is something that always surprises the skeptics, but our entire life is made up of chance happenings, good or bad, against which human will is virtually powerless. Until now, my dreams had given me good advice and judicious warnings. Why should I not have listened to this one? Had I not reached a point in my life when I had very little to lose and everything to gain? Among other things, the wonderful presence of a man who was young, handsome, and strong, a man who showed extraordinary kindness to me. When he comes to close my eyes, something which in my present state of health is a possibility I must consider. His hands will be gentle. I have already told you about the dream in which the telephone rings and nobody speaks when I answer, that dream which predicts to me faithfully that the love between a man and myself is about to die. Every night following Theo's marriage proposal, I waited for the bad dream to come back. Would it be tonight, tomorrow night, the night after tomorrow? Nearly a month had passed. It must have been the last day of June. In my sleep, the telephone rang. I lifted the receiver, and for the first time, a voice replied to my anguished hello. That voice was the voice of Theo. But I was still not convinced. I said to myself, who are you to believe that you still have a right to happiness? A woman who has made a collection of lovers and unhappy loves. You've ruined your health by hanging around bars all night, never following the orders the doctors imposed on you. You're exhausted. You're more worn out than any other woman your age. Result, the slightest draught makes you take to your bed for a week. The slightest distance you walk exhausts you. If you depart from your diet even a little, you're ill for several days, and each time it takes you longer to recover your strength. I said to myself, you've done too many stupid things in your life. You've earned an entire fortune, but you've thrown it away, often stupidly. Instead of having a welcoming and well-furnished apartment, not even the piano in your salon belongs to you. At 47, I found myself just the same as I was the day when I was 16 and left my father to go singing in the streets. That is to say, alone, with fewer illusions, fewer hopes, and less strength. How can all that end except in catastrophe? Death would be less of a disaster. But suppose you suddenly found yourself a little old lady without talent, financially ruined, dependent on other people, you who until now usually took charge of others. My assessment ended when I discovered that I was bankrupt to such an extent that I finally found myself overwhelmed with scruples. This young man, whose life was just beginning, did I have the right to make him share what remained of mine? So much ruin, so much degeneration. To counterbalance all this, there was the dream. When dawn came, the sound of the telephone was still ringing in my ears. Then all my scruples vanished. After all, was I not going to love him more than any other woman could love him? Soon I was waiting for Theo as though I were an impatient young girl, when he came again to ask me to marry him. I hesitated no longer. I said yes. Je ne regrette rien. I love him. If that shocks anyone, it can't surprise them. What woman of my age would not be dazzled by the love of a man his age? Besides, when I analyze this love, I find not only the love of a woman for a man, but also another feeling that life has denied me until now. Maternal love. Theo, with his laughter, his drive, and his youth, sometimes makes me feel like I have a son. In the most sensual of mistresses, there is always a mother concealed from view. Only those who see wrong in everything will be offended. I myself know that my love for Theo is something of which I need not feel ashamed. If that had been the case, would I have dared a few days later to go to Lisieux to ask a favor from the saint who had restored my sight to me when I was a child? No, that would have been sacrilege. We knelt down, Theo and I, in front of her statue, and I begged her, grant me a few more years of the happiness I've just discovered, the happiness I've waited for all my life. I don't know if these years will be granted to me. What I do know is that however short they are, even if there is only one, or even just a few months of happiness, I shall always thank Providence. I no longer deserved that happiness. I no longer believed in it.